Okay, so it is December 20th, 10 p.m. Pacific time. Just watched a really entertaining game between the two best teams in the West, record-wise, and the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, with the Nuggets winning. So Davis, how is your day going so far?
I'm good. Just finished watching the game myself as well.
Nice, nice. So today we are going to talk about um the teams currently seeded from 3 to 11. So we're not going to talk about
The
the
West.
in the West, sorry. So we're not going to talk about the Grizzlies or the Nuggets because right now not only are they both tied for first, they both have major players out who will be returning shortly. So they will improve even more so than they are right now, and they're both the top two teams record wise. So, but the teams currently ranked 3rd to 11 in the West. They are only separated by 4 games, I believe, as of today, with the third seed being the Suns and the 11th seed currently being the Warriors, who got stomped on by the Knicks today. Um, so so these teams, they're very bunched up, and honestly, most of them are pretty good. There are some surprises. There are some, and when I say surprises, in a good way and in a bad way, and there's some teams that are, kind of in neutral, right? They're kind of just cruising along. They're kind of in the middle of the pack. They might go up or they might go down. But let's talk about some of the, I guess, some of the not necessarily the third, fourth, and fifth seed, but more so the three teams that are playing well or are currently, you know, not only are they overachieving, but they position themselves for to not only make the playoffs, but possibly make some noise in the playoffs. So which teams do you think those are, Davis?
Three teams, right?
Yeah.
I think honestly at this point in time, the third, fourth, and fifth seed in no particular order are most likely going to at least have, in my opinion, like the at least home court advantage for the first round, which are going to be the Pelicans, Suns, and Clippers. Um, but
Oh, okay. But then we also have the Nuggets and the Grizzlies. So
Oh,
that's five
I
teams.
mean, oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, you're right. That's so between the three, I actually think the Suns and the Clippers, are, in my opinion, are going to be are going to have home court at least in the first round. I just think the inexperience of the Pelicans might wear them down throughout the season. That's pretty much it. And also, Brandon Ingram's also hurt, so which doesn't hurt the Pelicans, which definitely hurts the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think now this is just from a seeding point of
Yeah,
view, not who will, like, make the finals, reach the conference finals. But in terms of seeding, I think the Suns will probably stay in one of those top four spots, just because to a lesser extent, kind of similar to the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, they're playing pretty well with no Crowder, no Cam Johnson, and no Booker the last couple games. So they are staying afloat, but then they once they get the majority of the guys back, they'll probably stay in the top four. I think the Clippers will. It's hard to say the Clippers because they're so in and out, like on a regular basis. I think they're the most. They may stay in that fourth seed, or they may just drop out. It honestly just depends on how many games they all want to play. Um, I think the Pelicans, if I'm being honest, I don't think it matters where they seed, just because regardless of where they finish in the West, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, I think they'll probably like win a round, maybe two, and lose, right? Because they don't have much playoff experience besides the few games from last year. But in terms of where they'll finish,
I mean, I think they're for sure going to be a playoff team.
yeah, I
Not quite sure on the seeding. We're still pretty early in the season to see what.
yeah, I think if I had to guess, I would probably say that the Pelicans would finish above the Clippers, just because, okay, both teams have injury risk. Zion is injury risk, so is Kawhi, right? Let's just get that out of the way. But in terms of the consistency, because for the Clippers, it's not just Kawhi. It's like half their team are in and out, whether it's PG, Reggie Jackson, Powell, Covington, right? They're always in and out. So I feel like it's hard to build consistency and to go on a winning streak and really kind of like build that chemistry over time when you have guys constantly in and out, right? So it's hard to adjust. So I think at least with the Pelicans, the core group has played together a fair amount so far this season, like excluding Ingram. So at least there is some level of consistency there. So for me, I think that the Pelicans and the Suns will still finish with home court in the first round. I think the Clips will probably be outside of that top four personally.
I guess we're gonna have to see. I think for me, it's primarily I understand your points, but I just think the Clippers are, at least on paper, right, very deep team.
Yeah.
So I mean, and also it's all contingent on health. To be honest with you, right? The last few years, someone's hurt. At some point in the season, if one person is healthy again, then someone else gets hurt. So it's like this carousel of players
Yeah.
going in and out of the lineup.
Let me ask you this about the Clippers. Do you think that they should make a consolidation trade? Because as you mentioned, they're really deep, but they're almost too deep, right? Because like just if we just look at their bench alone, they have Batum, they have Covington, they have Norman Powell, they
John
have
Wall.
they have Terrence Mann, they have Luke. I mean, okay, it depends on what I say bench loosely because they don't have a consistent starting five. So I say bench very loosely, right? They also have John Wall. They have Amir Coffey, who plays pretty well, but sparingly, right? So they have so many bench guys, and the majority of these guys are, 6'5" to like 6'8" too, right? So with all that depth, do you think that they should make a consolidation trade, like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 for someone who's, like not necessarily a starter, but a higher quality player to kind of have some consistency with their bench? Because it's hard for bench players to really be consistent when there are nights where they play 25 minutes, there's nights when they play 5 minutes, depending on who's available, right? And especially since the majority of the bench guys, a lot of them make 8 figures annually as well, So what are your thoughts about them potentially or maybe needing to make a consolidation trade?
It's going to be kind of iffy because I think ultimately it depends on injuries. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the Clippers guys are injury prone for whatever reason. And so I think having a deep bench actually helps them in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
In case someone does get hurt, at least your backup isn't terrible, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can keep playing. So that's my opinion. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do decide to pull the trigger and try to get, I guess, a more, I guess, a better player overall that will help their team and then have a slightly weaker bench.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I don't really know how much they can really move or how much. Yeah, I don't know how many contracts they can really move to get someone really good that would help to benefit their team. Because I think right now their guards and wings, even for like their forwards and guards are really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they just need someone a backup center for Zubac.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because everyone else is, I mean, like they'll maybe use like Morris here and there as like this center, or maybe like even like Covington, but like you need a bit more size.
Yeah,
In
like
certain matchups.
yeah. So right now the Clippers can trade one first round pick, 2028. So I mean, a lot of names that are being thrown out there is Kelly Oubre, Kyle Kuzma, those type of guys who are like on pretty reasonable deals. So I mean, I don't know if the Clippers will make trades. But I mean, I feel like they have a I don't know, for me, for them, I think they need to make some type of consolidation trade. Just to build some type of consistency there. But I mean, they have players that a lot of teams would want, a lot of these
Right.
long wings who can shoot, who can defend. So yeah, they have a lot of flexibility with their team.
Oh yeah, that definitely. Oh, they have Moses Brown. I just
Yeah. Yeah, him too, right? Yeah.
It was pretty solid with the Thunder, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
A couple years back.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Let's because I think the Suns, the Pelicans, and the Clippers, especially the Suns and the Pelicans, will be all right. I think those teams will more or less stay afloat, injury aside, right? Let's go towards the middle. So in the middle, currently we have the Kings, the Blazers, and Utah. And relatively speaking, all three teams are playing better than expected, right? So, like all three teams, especially Utah, are overachieving to this point.
And the Kings.
Right. Kings are overachieving, but I feel like a lot of folks were somewhat high on the Kings before the season. Just because they saw Keegan Murray at Summer League. They liked the Kings getting Cameron Herder and Malik Monk, and also getting Mike Brown as a coach. I feel like the Kings, they are overachieving, but I don't think it's like shocking a lot of people. I think it's like mildly surprising, but I think some folks thought the Kings would.
Historically, they're just, it doesn't matter what they
Well,
do.
let me phrase it this way. I think that people are much more surprised about how bad the Warriors, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves are than they are surprised about how good the Kings are. That's probably the best way to like phrase it, right? They're more surprised about how some teams are really bad, while some teams are pretty good.
Terrible.
That's probably the best way to like phrase that, or a better way to like phrase it. So, all those three teams, the Kings, the Blazers, and the Jazz, where do you want to start?
I think we've spoken about the Kings in the last podcast. So I think let's talk about the Jazz. Actually, I think probably the most interesting topic out of these couple teams that we just mentioned. The Jazz are surprisingly doing really well. I know they had a really hot start to the season. Things kind of fizzled out, which is kind of expected given their roster, but they're still overachieving considering the roster they have. Like, keep in mind, like, the Jazz, no one thought the Jazz were going to be good after trading away Gobert and Mitchell. But they got a ton of assets, so they're actually in a really good situation where like their team isn't terrible and they have a lot of assets to actually try to compete if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's crazy, but I think it's also I know Quinn Snyder stepped down this past off season, and they hired Will Hardy, who's as the head coach. So far, I think he's done a great job. But ultimately, right now, it's the chemistry of the team is really good, and also the extremely surprising play out of Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah. I think the Jazz. I mean, this is just more of a educated guess, but and I think a lot of people will expect this at some point. There's not really a player. I mean, I guess Markkanen and Sexton are relatively young.
Yeah.
I think that I think that they're just being patient. Once it becomes January, once it becomes February, when teams are more open to do trades, especially trades that involves top tier players. I think Utah is being patient to see if they can make some type of consolidation trade, because all of their players make reasonable contracts. All right, like no one's making like $25 million. Everyone on their team is making in the teens, except for Conley, who's making just over 20, in the teens or in the low to mid millions. So it's really easy for them to package salaries to match a top tier player, and of course they have the draft capital. Having said that, if there isn't top tier talent that's up for trades in January and February, I think that they will make very minimal trades. Right. I don't think they're gonna like just dismantle their entire team. I think they might trade a player away or two to maybe get another pick, but it's hard for me to imagine them just blowing it up unless there's a top tier player that becomes available. Right.
Right.
So I think for them, they are probably more primed for the play-in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
just a team with great chemistry. They don't really have a star player, but I think they're well coached, and everyone's gelling together really well.
Yeah. I do think that the Blazers probably need the 6th seed more so than the Kings. I think regardless of the Kings is 6 or 7 or 8, I think they'll be happy.
Yeah,
I think
anywhere in the
for
playoffs.
yeah, I think for the Blazers, getting because Dame is relatively older now too.
Yeah, they
He's
need.
I
Yeah,
believe he's in his this is 11th season now, right? And he's had severe, not severe, but pretty somewhat moderate sized injuries the last couple years too. So I think getting him some rest would be before the playoffs, so would be good. So for me, I would probably bank on the Blazers getting that 6th seed because I feel like they need it more.
yeah,
Whereas
I completely agree.
the Kings, once the Kings are clinched the play-in, right? So once like in like mid to late March that they clinch the play-in, they can't finish any lower than 10. I don't see them like trying to go hard for the 6th seed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think ultimately I think the Kings will actually, if they continue playing the way they've been playing, they'll at least bare minimum, as you mentioned, will make the play in.
Yeah. Also, if you're the Blazers, you don't want to be in the play-in because you have never done well against the Warriors, right? And do you want to play the Mavericks with Luca, right? And it's one game. You win or
Yeah,
you win or you win or you like go home, right? So I feel like if you're the Blazers, you understand that you want to avoid that scenario like altogether, right? So okay, cool. So let's move down to the last 3 teams. So the Warriors, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves. All 3 teams underachieving. In my opinion, not super surprising for the Timberwolves, but for the Warriors and Mavericks, a bit surprising. But so currently, the Wolves and the Mavericks are in 9 and 10, and the Warriors are in 11. But again, it's only a game and a half separating those 3 teams. But where do you want to start with these 3 teams?
I personally want to start with the Timberwolves just because their story is a bit more interesting, right? Because they gave up
Mhm.
their future for Rudy Gobert, who's hurt, and it really hasn't been panning out for them so
Is he
far.
hurt? Is he hurt right now?
He's hurt. Yeah, that's why Reed's playing. He had a 20 something point game the other night. I'm like, huh, how did this guy get this many points? Oh, Gobert's hurt.
Oh, is he hurt? Oh, man, I wasn't aware. Oh, he is hurt. Okay.
Yeah, so which doesn't help. But in addition to that, I think potentially bigger story is the just D'Angelo Russell not playing very well this season,
Mhm.
which he's a key piece of that team. So for him
Oh
to
yeah,
really well.
yes, yeah. So not to cut you off, but looks like Gobert's injury is fairly minor. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, no worries. I mean, it's still. I mean, like if you when you trade the future for for this guy, you would like to hope that he'll be healthy, especially during
Yeah,
this time of the year where it's a new team. They're still trying to figure out and get great chemistry with their teammates. It's not great to get hurt early.
yeah. I mean, he's missed a week. Okay, yeah. God, I mean, I've been so preoccupied with the talents being hurt. I mean, I guess I didn't realize that Gobert has been out this week too.
Yeah,
Damn.
no
Okay,
worries.
shoot.
And D'Lo is just not playing well. I
Yeah.
mean,
So I, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they're not going to re-sign D'Lo. Even if they wanted to trade him, I don't know how much value, if any, he has around the league besides being an expiring contract. Um, yeah, man, like the Wolves are pretty stuck. Towns is out for I believe about another 6 weeks, give or take. Um, I think Gobert will be back. Will be back soon. He's missed a week so far, but he's been questionable for all these games. So I think he'll be back. Um, yeah, man, it's hard to tell where they go just because they don't really have a consistent shooter. They don't have a consistent 5-man lineup. Because okay, even though the Warriors are like playing bad, you know that when healthy, they have a good 5-man lineup that's consistent and plays well together, right? The Wolves don't really have a 5-man lineup where they are comfortable with and they play well and execute well together, right? Because even now, like they're still I think for the first week that Towns was out and they only had Gobert is when Edwards kind of took off, right? And the Wolves started to win some like games and have some consistency, right? So man, I really don't know where they go just because I mean, they already emptied their treasure chest, except for Jaden McDaniels. So it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to
Even
see
then,
where to go from here.
though, to be fair, yeah, they're still not playing well, but D'Lo's playing a lot better more recently. Now that I think about it, but he started the season like really, really rough. But then again, I guess that also helps in his case that all of his other stars are hurt. Teams are hurt, so
I mean, I don't. I personally wouldn't do this, but if you were like the Timberwolves, would you honestly use your last real trade chip in McDaniels and package him with whether it's Russell or whether it's someone else on your team to upgrade either at the point guard spot or at the forward spot?
yeah, I don't know because it depends on how much they want to appease Cat. Because D'Lo and Cat are like best friends. Because I mean, it depends. I mean, I know basketball is a business, but I mean, Cat is also your star player.
Yeah,
So
I don't think Alex Rodriguez cares about that.
yeah, he's trying to win the championship. So we'll see. Because I mean, even then, like if you wanted to package McDaniels, who's like an okay player with D'Lo, like which teams would want him, and what, given these teams are interested, like what can they give the Timberwolves? I mean, picks, but I mean, what if you trade D'Lo for picks, you're not going to get a quality player back because again, they're at a point where they kind of have to just run with this core to some degree because they don't really have any picks for the future.
Yeah, and not only that, excluding Gobert, McDaniels is their best defender on the team.
I mean, which he's a great defender, but he's not the best offensively.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And God, I'm gonna look this up really quick, but I am pretty sure that the Wolves are in the bottom five in rebounds, even though they have Cat and they have Gobert. But I'm like pretty sure. But let me just double check because I am fairly positive right now. Let me see. And which is because I don't know about you. I haven't watched a ton of their games, but I watched like a three or four. Okay, so they are currently 22nd in rebounding. Okay, so they're currently 22nd. So they're like in the bottom fourth or bottom third right now. Okay, so bottom fourth. So then the bottom fourth of the league right now in the rebounding. But then the one thing that if you watch their team play, um, when a shot goes up, now I get it. Different coaches have different philosophies. When you shoot when the ball is shot, you want your team to go back on defense. You don't want guys to try. You don't want your guys, a ton of guys, to try to go for offense rebounds because if they don't get the offense rebound, then the other team has an advantage. You know, a 3-on-2 or 4-on-2 on the opposite side of the court. I get that, but when you watch the Wolves play and when shots are missed at the rim, you see guys either one not boxing out, right? So they're literally just missing rebounds because they're not boxing out. Like Cat does not know how to box out, like quite frankly, especially since he's at the four now, right? Even though he's hurt. And two, they kind of watch the ball expecting Gobert to get the rebound a lot, or or they kind of watch the ball while they backpedal, but not really like commit to getting back on defense, if that makes sense. So for me, I don't even think that it's a matter of upgrading the roster. I think it's just more of changing your habits and changing your behaviors on the court because boxing out and rebounding and getting back on defense in a timely manner is basic stuff. But when I watched them, and again, I've only watched a few games, like three or four games. Those are subtle things that I see that is pretty disturbing, right? Because they have the talent, they may or may not mesh well together, but in terms of those little things like boxing out and getting back in defense and not ball watching, those are little tendencies that I see when I watch them.
You just need some more hustle in them, more or less.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what it really boils down to.
Yeah, like it's they like low key miss, Vanderbilt, who they had last year, right? The trade away where
Yeah.
he's the one that hustled, he's the one that blocks out, he's the one that's flying for the rebounds, he's the one that play D. So yeah.
Anything for the Jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um let's move on to the Mavericks. What are your thoughts on the Mavericks so far?
I think it's really simple, to be honest. Luca is literally carrying that team because he's just not getting help from. I think one big thing that they didn't quite account for was the loss of Jalen Brunson and how important he was on the offense.
Mm.
Because without Brunson, they don't really have that second scorer outside of like Dinwiddie, who's solid, right? But he's not as good as Brunson in terms of scoring.
Yep. Yeah. 100% true there. Like I think letting your second best player walk for whether you think it was an overpay or whatever, like the point is, even if they thought it was an overpay,
Mm-hmm.
the contract wasn't so egregious where you could not trade it later if you need to. Right. So that's the obvious part. For me, how do I say this? Their roster is filled with there are players on the roster that are only good offensively or only good defensively. The only good two-way player right now is probably Dorian Finney-Smith. Last year, you can say that so was Reggie Bullock, but so far he hasn't shot the ball well. But in terms of like Dinwiddie, Hardaway, Christian Wood, all offensive players leaves a lot to be desired on the defensive end. And on the opposite spectrum, Powell, Kleba, who just got hurt, by the way, so he's out for indefinitely for the next few months with hamstring surgery. Bullock,
Well, yeah.
Nick, right? Even guys that are like bench warmers, like Frank Ntilikina, those guys are just defensive players, right? So they don't have like another high quality player next to Doncic. Actually, no, this is a good question. In your opinion, who's the second best player on the Mavericks like right now?
Right now, the second best player on the Mavericks. That's a good. I would say I don't know because I think you can make an argument for Dorian Finney-Smith. Um, I'm not sure how well Christian Wood is playing for them, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna have to go with Dinwiddie
Okay.
if I had to pick one player. I need to
Yeah.
check Christian Wood though. He potentially could be.
Yeah. But
I
you
haven't seen him
see,
in the Mavericks game.
but then you see my point, right? It's they have so many like I guess pretty decent to good role players, but in terms of like like not even a second star, just a second option,
Yeah.
right? Because even with like other teams where you have like I don't know, even like not so great teams, like I don't know, like the Timberwolves that we just spoke about, right? At least you know who the second best player on that team is. Or if you talk about the Utah Jazz, right? You would say probably the best player is Marketing. You would say their second best player is probably Clarkson, right? Again, Clarkson's not like an all star or anything, but at least you know who your second options are. With this team, like just the delta between Luca and everyone else is so massively huge, right? So it's really hard to like pinpoint, what to do here. And the thing is, they don't have a lot of assets to make a trade for a secondary player that can play alongside Luca because they honestly had that last year in Brunson, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, they can only make two more trades. I'm sorry, they only have two picks to trade right now. Let me just double check that, but I believe yeah. So they only have two picks to trade right now,
Yep.
right? Unless they give up the protections to like New York, then they have three picks to trade. But right now they only have two picks to trade, and they have somewhat movable contracts, but
I mean, they also. Oh, I think we forgot to mention they also just signed Kimber Walker. to see if he can kind of fill that void.
Okay, so I know Kemba scored 32 the other day, but Kemba is right now, I think he's one of those players where he will play well one out of every 3 or 4 games. And the other 2 or 3 games, he's going to be inconsistent or shoot poorly or not be very effective. I think that's the kind of player he is at this point.
I mean, well, what I'm trying to say is like they tried to kind of fulfill that
Yeah.
Brunson role ish, or just give more depth
Yeah. And
in guards
I get the logic. It's like low risk, high reward if Kemba,
and turn back the clock.
yeah, because I mean he's not gonna play a full 82 season. There's only 4 months. I mean, there's only 4 months left in the season, and you have the All-Star break in 2 months. So if you think that you can get a good 40-ish games out of him and that won't be too much wear and tear on his knees, then again, low risk, high reward. So I get the logic behind it, but I don't think it's going to move the needle too much.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just pointing that out just because I don't know. He's been getting a decent amount of minutes, so he may be able to affect the game for
Yeah,
positively or negatively. I guess we're gonna have to see.
yeah,
But I think the point that I wanted to get across with talking about the Mavericks is just like Luka's doing too much, and as you mentioned, like as we both agree, like there's no definitive second second star in a way, right? I mean, I think I just checked and Christian Wood's actually playing pretty well for them, but as you mentioned, he's not the best defensive player, more of an offensive big, as well as with Dinwiddie. But again, it really depends on the night, and then it's just inconsistent um, production from Hardaway as
yeah.
well. Yeah,
I think big trade aside,
um,
assuming they don't make a big trade, the one thing I will say about Christian Wood is that he's slowly kind of buying into Jason Kidd's coaching. So what I mean by that is, if you watch the first 8 to 10 games of the season, you can tell that Christian Wood was very frustrated whenever he was subbed out. There were times when he wouldn't, hustle back on defense. There's times when, you know, if he didn't touch the ball for more than 3 or 4 possessions, his mind would wander on defense a little bit. Like his guy would like cut around him and so on and so forth. I will say that the last maybe 5 or 6 games, he's been more engaged defensively. His minutes have gone up a tad, and he's also, I mean, this stuff is really minor, but he's also handling the media better in terms of answering questions that doesn't cause extra drama behind his minutes and whether he starts or comes off the bench. I will say that if that trend continues, that he continues to become more engaged on defense, and now that Kleba is out, he's naturally going to get more minutes. Not saying that he's going to start, but he's naturally going to get more minutes. If he slowly improves overall and gains more trust from Jason Kidd and begins to actually start, which may or may not happen, that could be a way to kind of mitigate some of the flaws that this team has and at least gives Luka a solid number 2. That's
yeah,
something that I could see potentially happening, but who knows? Like it's so hard to say right now because there's to your point, they're so Luka heavy, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the roster. There's really not too many trade chips. I mean, like you'll have like Hardaway. I think you can probably try to move at this point, and also Davis Bertans. But like, who wants these players for the amount they
Yeah,
paid?
the
In addition
only
to that, it's not these are long term deals. These are not both
yeah,
have 3 years left in them. So I mean, the only type of team that I can think of that would want them would be a team trying to win a championship because I think they would be a good addition to the bench. But I mean, you're not paying a role player that much money if they're not unable to produce. So I think the person that's going to be the most hardest, the most challenging to trade would be Bertans because he can literally only shoot spot up threes, and I don't know if he's actually shooting them very well.
mhm.
So
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't think Dallas would trade within their same division. So I don't see them making a trade with the Spurs or the Rockets, who are both at the bottom of the league right now. But a guy like Eric Gordon would be super helpful for this team right now, right? But
Um,
again, I don't see Dallas trading within their same division slash state.
I don't think it would hurt them either in their defense because like say you were to get if you're able to get rid of Hardaway or Bertans for but then I think at the same time they probably have to give up their picks because Houston is not a competitive team right now and these are long-term deals.
They would
So
have to give up at least one pick.
yeah, they
Yeah.
would have to give some incentive for Houston to take
Yeah.
these longer-term deals.
Yeah. Okay. Let's the one thing that I will say that if if the Mavericks finish in the play-in, I am pretty confident that they will make the playoffs just because I feel Luca can win you at
They've
least one
proved their
game. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I will say. Okay. Let's move on to the Warriors who got spanked today. So Warriors, I think everyone knows their story. They have an amazing starting five, not so great bench. They've been amazing on the road. Sorry, amazing at home, terrible on the road. And now Curry is out. Wiggins is still out, even though he is expected to be back by Christmas. Where do you want to start with the Warriors?
Um, outside of Curry's injury, I think the injuries to other players certainly, it doesn't help their situation as well. I know like Wiggins out is going to be big. Their depth, like I know like JaMychal Green didn't play today. I think let's see, Thompson played, but like they're so thin. Their bench is so thin to where they're giving players that normally wouldn't get minutes, I guess, minutes to play.
Mm-hmm. So here's my viewpoint on the Warriors. So this I'm gonna give you both sides of the spectrum. On the positive side, now with Curry out, and to a lesser extent Wiggins being out, but I think he's coming back soon. Now you can really give a lot of minutes to, and I think DiVincenzo's out too. Yeah, he missed the
Vincenzo's also out.
yeah he's out too. So with all these guys out, especially Curry, you can basically just see what these young guys are made of over the next 10 to 15 games, depending on how long Curry's out.
That's true.
And regardless if they win a lot, they lose a lot, or they're somewhere in the middle, you can see what you have, right? It's not going to be a huge sample size, but you can at least see where they may fit. Now, let's say they go, I don't know, 2-10. That to me, and the reason why this will be good is that it would incentivize the front office to really make a deal if they fall that far back, right? Not
Right.
saying that they will, because the Warriors never make an in-season trade if you exclude the Wiggins trade from 3 years ago when they were tanking. Um, it would incentivize the front office to possibly make a move if they are falling so far back. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, the Warriors can be super stubborn, go 2-10, and hope that Curry coming back and then building the chemistry and having them try to go back up the rankings, right? Which I don't see happening, but I don't think it does the Warriors any good to play this out, and I don't think it does any good to the young players on the roster, like Kuminga and Wiseman and like Moody, to kind of have them on leashes, if that makes sense. Like, because you're kind of like have one step in the door, one step out. But I do think that this injury will be a good thing in hindsight, because you will get your answer within the next few weeks if this is the team that you want to move forward with for the rest of the year, or you want to just make adjustments and make some moves. So I feel like if Curry kept on playing, the Warriors would have been around 500, maybe a little bit above 500, and they would have been really stubborn about trying to play out the rest of the season and developing their young core. But now that Steph is out, it will fast track that. It will fast track that, and you will see if these young guys can play well without Curry, and if they can't, even though they're getting more minutes, that will push the front office to make a move or two.
Right. I would agree with you, but I think the only concern with that is that Curry's much older, so is Thompson. And to some degree you have to maximize, what they have
Yeah.
left,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
also with and in a tanking situation, this is fine because yes, as you mentioned, you do want to see what Kaminga has to offer with longer with more playing time as well as Wiseman, right? But at the same time, like, can they afford to go 2-10? Is more of the question. But at the
Yeah.
same time, they're kind of stuck in this situation, so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
might have to make a move anyway. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a tricky situation. Do you want to play it out with the guys you currently have, or you want to make a move? And but even then, right? Like, I think the best case scenario for them, it's tough because like say hypothetically, like Kaminga and Wiseman play extremely well. Do they want to keep them in that case because they are young players, or do you want to trade them for help now just to maximize, the big threes, time left on the team?
Yeah, man.
It's tough.
I I don't understand the concept of, if you want to do a, I guess, hand off to the next generation of players for your team after Steph and Draymond and Clay retire, or you know, I don't understand why you need to keep all of your young players. I don't understand why you can't retain, I don't know, two or three of them, and trade one or two of them. Right?
I think the problem.
I don't understand that logic where you are trying to force feed and develop four young players right now.
I think the issue that I understand where you're coming from, but the problem is none of them really has shown that much promise to the point where they actually have a lot of trade value. That's like the biggest thing. Like, okay, sure, like you want to get rid of Moody, or you want to get Kaminga, you want to get rid of Wiseman. What could you get in return though? That would actually help the team.
I mean, just kind of pie in the
That's
sky. Would an option? I mean,
the only young guy that's worth anything right now, to my at least in the trade market, would be Poole, but I highly doubt the trade. Like,
and even if they wanted to, they couldn't, because he's not trade eligible for another month, and he has a poison pill in his contract.
well, he's still young, so I think it's
Yeah.
still possible that a team would be willing to take the risk if he's on the market, which I doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. I don't know, a player like Kelly Olynyk would really help this team right now.
I agree. I mean, you need a scoring big man.
Yeah, I know that teams have kind of thrown out like the Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson from the Spurs. I don't see them as really good fits. Um, man, like, I don't know.
It's
Well,
tough because they're not that good, honestly. That's what it really boils down to, with at least based on what we've seen right now. I think they have a lot of raw talent. It's just kind of refining that raw talent into something that is efficient. Is what I'm trying to figure out. What the Warriors are trying to figure out. Because
yeah,
you'll
man.
have good. Because sorry to interrupt you, but it's like you'll have good like sequences, or like maybe certain plays that they do really well. I mean, even have a great game, but it's not a consistent. It's not a consistent thing with them. The
Yeah,
biggest,
yeah,
which is like the biggest issue. And
yeah.
as I mentioned earlier, it's like, okay, so like say even if they do want to trade them, like wouldn't teams know like they're doing well because of Curry being out with just more minutes? Do you think they have the capacity to develop them into whatever player they think they'll be as well, right?
hmm
Because just because they haven't shown too much promise so far, it's hard to tell. And our
Yeah,
team to take that risk.
yeah, yeah. I would love to see them. To your point, I don't know what teams would take the risk or not for trade for these young players, but I would love a team like, I don't know, the Rockets, you know, trading Eric Gordon to like the Warriors, and with Eric Gordon, like, he's played against the Warriors in the playoffs so many times, he
Yeah, but
knows
with the
that the
salaries
offense.
match,
Yeah, you have to give up like three players to make the salaries match. To your point, but I'm just throwing out like ideas, like, because I feel like,
I agree with you. I think Eric
yeah,
Gordon he's like the perfect piece for a contender.
yeah,
If you need a guard who can shoot threes,
and can
Can he play
defend.
defense anymore? I don't. Can he? Can he?
He can defend. Probably not as good as he used to be,
I
but
mean,
he can still
now, I mean
defend.
that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the past, yeah, he was great, but I mean, it's been years now. Now that I think about it, like when the Rockets were good, what, back in 2018, 2019, that was like what 3, 4 years ago, which is kind of hard to fathom. But yeah, that's a while back now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the Warriors would have to they would have to give up significant um salaries to get Eric Gordon because aside from their top, four players, everyone else does, at least with this season, it does not make a lot of money. Everyone's under 10
Also need
grand
to give
or
up
sorry,
picks
10,
too.
10 mil. So
You also need to give up picks. Yeah. So Eric Gordon's
uh,
at 19 mil right now.
yeah, just make the salaries work. You have to give up Wiseman, Kaminga, DiVincenzo just to make that trade work. Or you give up Wiseman, Ty Jerome, Moody, and Jermichael Green or something. Like
Yeah,
it
you get
just
like Wiseman, Kaminga, and Ty Jerome, but like, damn,
they're not gonna do that. Yeah,
there's
there's
too many young talent for like Eric Gordon who
yeah, there's very few
doesn't
players
have too
in
many years left as a
yeah.
player. So I don't know. I think that's too much of an investment for the Warriors to get him.
Yeah, there's very few players where the Warriors would package all the young players to get, and it's
And they
definitely
need something
not.
in return too. Uh, it's tough.
Yeah, like you wouldn't make that trade for Aaron Gordon. You'll probably make that trade for someone who's like in their relative prime, not necessarily an all-star, but at least someone who can shoot, can play make, can defend.
Let's
Just
give you
can
like 5 more years, or maybe 4 more years. Pretty much however long you think the big three has left. More or less, a bare minimum if they're going to give up. I mean, it's okay to mortgage the future to some degree, but like, I don't know. Like Eric Gordon is a solid player, but I don't know how many more good years he has left. It's hard to
mhm.
tell. Just because he's been playing on this really bad Rockets team, these past.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just summarize. And so all of the 9 teams that we discussed, um, how do you think the rest of the seedings will play out? So who do you think, assuming that Memphis and the Nuggets stay at the top, right? Who do you think will have home court? Who do you think will be in the play-in, and who do you think will just miss the play-in all together?
Okay, I I am ready to answer this question. Um, so I still obviously Denver and Memphis are going to be top two. I'm going to go with Phoenix as a third seed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Clippers at the fourth seed. I know we're going to disagree on that, but I think if I mean this is obviously assuming the Clippers are healthy
Mm-hmm.
somehow. If they're healthy, in theory, I think they're going to be the fourth seed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Pelicans at the fifth seed. I think the Mavericks might figure it out. So just because Luka's so good, I think they're going to be the sixth seed
Mm-hmm.
and then seventh seed in the play-in seven, and then the rest. I think Warriors. Who's gonna get out of the play-in? That's a good question. That's a good list because now the seventh to 10th seed are all play-in teams, right? So I think the Warriors will figure it out. I mean, they're just too good. Curry isn't lost for the season, so I think they'll be able to make a comeback. But who do I knock out? Uh, hmm. If I had to pick a team right now that's going to get knocked out, it might be the tough. I want the Kings to go to the playoffs. So let's see. I don't know. Maybe this is tough. Who do I knock out? But I think the Warriors are coming in. I think the Timberwolves actually.
Okay.
If I had to pick one team, I just think Utah's team. I mean, I think Blazers are going to do okay because if assuming Dame's healthy, and Jeremy Grant's playing really well for them
Mm-hmm.
as well as Simmons. I think they'll figure it out to at least make the plan. Yeah, if I were to pick one team right now, just due to health, Timberwolves
Okay.
out, and then I don't know the seeding will be 7 to 10. I don't really necessarily have like a specific like order in mind, just because I
Mm-hmm.
think they're all kind of fringe teams to some degree.
Yeah.
If I were to pick one, maybe Dallas at 7, but everyone else is going to be interchangeable between
Okay.
8 to 10.
Okay. All right. So I more or less have the same thing as you, except in a different order. So I actually think that the Pelicans will stay at 3. Um, I know that Ingram is out for at least another week. But I just feel like okay, everything's predicated on health, obviously, but I
Yeah.
just feel like um they have the teams that are still available besides the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, they have the most stability and they have the most depth and they have the most talent, right? And they have great coaching. So, and I feel like once Ingram comes back, and they're a top three seed without Ingram the last I think 2.5 3 weeks. I think they'll stay at three. I actually think that the Suns will probably fall back a little bit just because they're just running out of bodies. Unless they trade Jay Crowder pretty soon, not having him, not having Cam Johnson, Booker is out, Chris Paul is very inconsistent. I just feel like they're running out of bodies. And I feel like the Clippers are getting healthy. And Kawhi is starting to play a bit more, starting to look like himself a bit more. I think the Clippers will probably overtake the Suns at 4, and the Suns will probably finish in fifth. 6, I think the Blazers will get the 6th spot just because, as I mentioned before, I think they'll be motivated to get into the playoffs and not be in the play-in. And then to your point, 7 to 10, I feel like they're all interchangeable. I don't think the Mavericks, to your point, will finish at 10. I think they're more likely to be closer to 7 than to at 10. Um,
Yeah,
and
the play
barring
tough.
and barring a blow up trade from the Jazz, I think I would agree with you that I see the Timberwolves missing the play-in just because Cat is out for a
Yeah,
while.
injuries.
Um, I don't see a lot of consistency from that team. At least from the Warriors. At the very least, from the Warriors, you know that once Steph comes back, at least you have a very good starting five. At least you have some consistency there, right? You might not have it from your bench, but at least you have some consistency there. Whereas with the Timberwolves, there's no consistency like anywhere really, right? So I think I would agree with you that the Wolves would probably fall out. And
Try to pick a team. It's tough though. It
yeah,
really is. It's just the health. If the Wolves are fully healthy, I would pick the Jazz to get knocked out.
yeah, yeah.
Just because I think the Kings are just too motivated. Like I don't know. Like I think the Kings are going to be like a fun team to watch, and I think they might squeak out like number 10 or something like that. I don't know
Yeah, but
if they
so hypothetically speaking, and this might not even be hypothetical. Can you imagine the Wolves missing the play-in after trading 4 first-round picks and 3 pick swaps? And then can you imagine that either either the Warriors or the Mavericks potentially losing in the play-in as well? Because it sounds like we both think that both teams will be in the play-in,
yeah.
right? And I don't know. And those two teams were in the conference finals last season and in the West. So there's a chance that they one or both teams may go from conference finals to not even officially making it out of the play-in tournament. So that's a little nugget to
Yeah, it's
throw out there.
crazy. And there's also like the fringe teams. I actually there's only really one fringe team. It's just the Lakers, but I don't really think there's too much to talk about with them. AD's hurt again, and we need to see if LeBron is going to play more games because he's gonna have to. No, not just for the Lakers to make the playoffs, but I'm sure he's chasing. I know for a fact he's chasing the scoring title from Kareem,
Mm.
the points title. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
He,
I don't even want to get started on the Lakers right now. My goodness. Okay. All right.
That's about it for the West.
Yeah. Yeah, and full disclosure to those, we were going to talk about the East as well, but the East, it's not as compact as it was a week ago. It's much more dispersed now. Like I think last week there was 4 games separating third from 11th in the East as well, and now there's 8 games. So maybe next time we'll talk more about the East, but the West just seems much more interesting currently since there's so many teams cramped together. Before we close out, is there anything else you want to discuss, Davis?
No, I think at least from my end, I think we're good for tonight.
Cool, man. Well, it's always nice having these conversations with you. I guess if I don't speak with you before the holidays, then I hope you have a great holiday break. And yeah, we'll sync back up sometimes after the holidays.
Sounds good. Always a pleasure chatting with you, man.
Thanks, man.
Happy
Signing
holidays.
off.